Hello, Favorite Fam. How are we all doing? Trust you're doing very well. Thank you so much to my subscribers for always stopping by on my channel. If you're new here, you're welcome to the family. Please do well to subscribe, like, share, and don't forget to give us a thumbs up. All right. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make this beautiful shirt. If this looks like something you've been interested in, keep watching. So these are the materials required for this project. We'll be needing some Ankara print fabric. We'll be needing our ruler, we need our tape, our scissors, and of course our chalk. Right. So the first thing I did was to fold my fabric using the largest circumference, which was my hip measurement, divided by 4 plus 2 inches. And then I'm going to be cutting for the back first before I'll use it to cut out for the front. I went ahead to rule out a straight line. This is where my border line, this is where I'm going to start all my measurements from. So I started out by imputing my shoulder measurement, which was 15, divided by 2, and that gave me 7.5. So I went ahead to mark out 7.5 like you see me do, and I took that all the way down to my chest line, and I got my chest line by dividing my bust by 6 plus 2.5. My bust measurement is 39 divided by 6 gave me 6.5, and I added 2 plus 2.5 inches, that gave me 9. So this is me measuring 9 inches from this border line. That is where my chest line is going to stop at, and then I ruled that into a straight line and then connected the vertical line for the shoulder to around that area. After I was done, the next thing I did was to add 0.5 inches to the shoulder. This is my sewing allowance, and then I connected that into a straight line. After I was done, the next thing I did was to impute my round neck measurement. And because I'm cutting for the back, I used 3.5 by 1 inch, 3.5 width by 3.5 width by 1 inch, 3.5 inch by 1 inch, because that's for the back. And I used my curved ruler to connect that. After I was done, the next thing I did was to come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope. Now shoulder. I came down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope and connected that to my shoulder tip. All right. And after I was done, I went ahead to impute my shoulder to nipple, which was 11 inches, and mark that into a straight line. So the next thing I did at this juncture was to insert my waist to my hip, to waist to my half length, because that's where my waist measurement is going to be inserted. I measured my waist, my shoulder to my half length, which was 16 inches. I went ahead and ruled that into a straight line. After I was done, the next thing I did was to measure the length of my shirt, which was 30 inches. I measured it and ruled that into a straight line also. I went ahead to add about 1 inch for the hemming allowance and also ruled that into a straight line. The next thing I did was to measure everything I had from my shoulder slope to my chest line, and I divided it by 2. I marked that point and went ahead to insert my bust measurement, which was 39 divided by 4, which was 9.75 plus 2 inches. I added that, I marked that, and went ahead to insert my waist measurement, which was 32 divided by 4, which gave me 8, and I added 3 inches. That 3 inches, instead of, I'm going to be adding that, even though I later didn't add that, but the idea was to allow for ease. It's not supposed to be a fitted shirt. So after I was done, I went to the hem of the shirt and inserted my hip measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches, and then I used my ruler to connect those points together. The next thing I did at this juncture was to go ahead and add 0.5 inch on the neckline and on the shoulder slope. At the hem area, I came up by 1.5 inch. I didn't want my shirt to be just straight. I needed to give it some kind of curve, that shirt like curve. And then I used my curved ruler to, blend that in back into the center back, like you can see me do in this video. And I went ahead and cut it out and made some notches around the waist area, and that was it. So since I was done with the back pattern, I'm going to use the back to cut out for the front, and to enable me do that, I had to measure out about 2.5 inches, which was later folded in for the bottom placket. That is where my button holes and my button is going to stand. Then I went ahead to come down by 3.5 inches. I was doing 3.5 by 3.5 inches for the width for the front. Please, whenever you're doing this, ensure that the bottom placket is on fold. I created a box first before getting my round neckline. All right, so after I was done, I went ahead and used my curved ruler to get that curve, because this is shirt, we don't want to make any mistakes. So I finished curving that neckline part. I used my scissors to cut that out, and eventually went ahead to use my scissors to cut every other part. So this bottom placket is and the neckline is the only difference between the front and the back, like you can see me do in this video. After I was done cutting that, I went ahead to make a notch around that placket. Now me and notches, we are inseparable, and this is just so to help me ensure that my plackets are properly aligning when I eventually go to sew it. And also I went ahead to divide open my front pieces. They're supposed to be two, not just one. So that was what I went ahead to do. And after I was done, I went straight to my ironing table so that I can iron stay on that bottom placket to give it some form of stability. I also differentiated the front and the back so that with a chalk, so that I don't end up sewing the wrong sides. So the next thing I did was to go to my ironing table, ironed about 0.5 inches, and then I folded it by 1 inch, and then went ahead to stitch that out down. 0.5 inches folded, and then folded by 1 inch. All right, and that was it. I went ahead to stitch for both sides of the bottom placket, and then went ahead to sew my shoulders. As you can see me do right now, I stitched both shoulders for the left and for the right sides. I didn't want this shirt to have any rough edges, right? So I went ahead to fold in the allowance. I folded a little, about 0.25, and then folded it more like hemming it, top stitching on top of it, and that was what I did for both shoulders. And after I was done, I went ahead to sew the sides at 0.75 inch, and also did the same thing I did for the shoulders, because I didn't want my raw edges to be exposed. I folded it in and top stitched neatly. You know how this your already made shirt comes? That was what I did. And after I was done, I went ahead to finish up the hem, and this hem was taking about 0.25 inches. And after I was done, I went ahead to measure my armhole. I had about 11 inches, and I measured the same thing on the armholes of the sleeve to ensure that everything is in sync. I had about 11 inches. I brought my sleeve and I did the same thing. I stitched at 0.75 inch, taking into consideration the fact that I didn't want my raw edges to be opened. So after I sewed at 0.75 inch, I also went ahead to top stitch, just so that my raw edges is not going to be left opened. Right, after I had top stitched on my sleeve, I went ahead to hem the sleeve part of it, neatly done. And then after I was done, I secured the armhole to armhole, under armhole to under armhole, and the shoulder tip to shoulder tip using my pins, and went ahead to finish that up. The next thing I did was to cut a long strip of fabric about, say, 1.25 inches width, a very long strip of fabric that could go around my neckline. And that was it. I went ahead to pipe my neckline. So I did that. I started sewing from the wrong side so that I would flip it over to the right side and top stitch. And this was what I went ahead to do, and in no time I was done doing that, like you can see me do. Yeah. So after I was done sewing the first time, I went ahead to use my scissors to notch it, to allow, the neck is a curve, to allow it to lay properly. So this was what I did, and when I was done, I just flipped it over. As you can see in the video, I flipped over, I folded once, and then folded the second time, and then that was it. In no time I was done, and that is it. I went ahead now to mark out the number of spacings I want in between my buttons. I used about 3 inches, and that was it. So guys, that brings us to the end of today's video. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new, don't forget to subscribe. See you in my next video.